Hello, it's a SIG Node weekly meeting. It's September 27th, 2022. Welcome, everybody. Today we have a quite long agenda, and but before we go into agenda item, I want to make a few reminders. We growing a number of PRs. It's expected at this stage of a release cycle because we want to fix bugs and do enhancement work at this stage. But I think it's unhealthy that you have that many. I know that there are many PRs that just not being looked at yet. I'm trying to triage them, but it's still like 102 untriaged PRs. So easiest to review something that needs review here. It means that it was already triaged. So if you want to pick something up, pick it from here. If you're an approver, please take a look at this need approver column. It's probably LGTM'd already by somebody, so it's safe to start approving those ones. Anyway, and if you're interested in what happened on last week, you can go ahead and click on these links. Closed. It's something. Thank you everybody for closing PRs as well. It's good to have PRs that is not longer necessary or was work in progress to be closed. It doesn't break our statistics too much. And merged PRs as well. Like if you're interested in what's going on and what people are working on, just click on this link and you'll know what happened last week. With that, I will switch to Raven.
Yeah, this is just a quick reminder. Hello, this is Raven speaking through Sergey's laptop. This is just a quick reminder on the 126 planning. So if you have anything that you plan to work on 126 cycle, please update the status on that 126 planning doc I linked there. And if you are planning to work on something that is not tracked there, please add it there. Today and tomorrow, I will ping the owners who haven't updated their status and yeah, try to find out if you're planning to work on it or not. The cap freeze is on 6 p.m. PDT, October 6th. So yeah, just a quick reminder on that.
Thank you, Raven. Moving on, Alexei. Alexei talking about CRI image pooling progress and notifications. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's me. Hello, can you hear me well?
Yeah, do you need a host to present or you just...
No, it's fairly straightforward. There is no diagram or no presentation to be shown at this moment. Basically, the idea is that when the image is pulled through a CLI, for example, when we usually do a Docker pull and then the image URI, then we see the progress of the layers of the container image being pulled. And some of the tools like containerd tool, CTR, when you do the CTR pull image, you also see the progress. That doesn't happen with the CRI-based tools. For example, the CRI CTL tool that operates with the CRI protocol between the runtime and the client. So when you issue a command, the runtime has the information how the progress of pulling the image goes, but it's not exposed through the CRI interface to the consumer who wants to know the progress. So that has at least two, in my opinion, important use cases. One is when a person, an admin or whoever the actor is pulling an image manually with the tool, it gives some visibility. And the other one is when the kubelet requests to pull the image, and sometimes in HPC, in AI area at least, the images can be like 8, 10, 15 gigabytes big. And if the broadband connection is not fast enough, that might take like 10 minutes to pull the image. And while this is happening, there is no visibility on the pod. There is no notification going on there. So it would be very good to see some sort of either progress, expose it, or maybe even the notifications. But for that, the CRI protocol interface needs to expose this information. So for that purpose, I suggest we create an API that will expose at least, if not both, the progress information and the notification. So I created the issue for that and the draft of the cap, and I'm planning to work on that. And my colleague Jukka, who is present here, I believe he's starting prototyping if he hasn't started already, and I will join him starting next week probably. So there is a fairly good chance we want it to be part of the 126. I will update the planning document respectively. And just bringing up the topic here, I brought it already in the cryo weekly meeting, and they liked the idea, but since it's going to be implemented in the CRI itself, so here it is being brought up then.
Yeah, so this came up in cryo, and like if I remember correctly, like earlier we with Docker shim, right? We had a way where kubelet will get updates that the image is still in progress, so don't cancel or fail the image pull. So my motivation is to bring that feature back over the CRI for bigger image pulls. So there's like no cycle of cancellation and retrying and cancellation and retrying for bigger images. So we can perform much better there.
That makes sense. The one question I have is, this has come up in the past where folks wanted to see the progress of an image pool by inspecting either an event or metadata on the pod. Are you wanting that as well? Or is it just you want to see when using the CRI, CTL, CLI progress?
Definitely the latter one too, but I haven't studied the technical details yet. I was working on other tasks.
Okay. I think wanting to see the progress of any image pool from the pod API itself, I would have concerns about because of basically the QPS that would drive back to the control plane. So that was some of the concerns that came up before.
Of course, I'm not suggesting every percent should be reported, but maybe like 25, 50%, some sort of tires, and only optionally, meaning that maybe if this is enabled as explicitly, maybe with feature gate or some config, maybe not even by default.
But
Yeah.
no matter.
I guess I would still push back on that a little bit because I question the human being that would typically look at that versus maybe a metric or some other. Like sometimes we optimize for like a debugging scenario, but like it'd still be a lot of information coming back in the happy path where it would drive a lot of load. So we got to be careful on that is all I'm gonna say. The other thing I saw listed here was that there was folks still using the serial image pool policy. I was actually surprised to see that only existed because in the very early days of the project, it was unsafe to pool concurrent images from a runtime. But I'm not aware of any runtime that actually has that limitation anymore.
I think actually with that one, there's one actually like for we actually look into whether to switch to like parallel pool internally, and we look into the current configuration, which is QPS based. But I'm not sure whether QPS is the best way to configure this, because even though we like limit, you can only pull 10, like 1 image per second, but each image pool will could take several minutes. And if you still pull 1 image every second continuously, then eventually you accumulate a lot of.
I guess I'll just make sure. I thought that the parallel image pooler we have allows you to pool up to n concurrent images.
Do we have that? I actually didn't find that.
Yeah.
If we already have that, then we should use that. Yeah.
Because, so I know it's not the default on the kubelet, but we've had that for many releases now. At least at Red Hat, we run with parallel image pooling, and I think it was Red Hat originally that caused it for serial because it was with, I think, device mapper that concurrent image pools weren't safe. Maybe Mernal, you remember that, but at least at least now there's no reason why a popular image storage driver doesn't support parallel.
Okay, so there's already like a cap of like you can only pull 10 images at the same time, a configuration. I will
that's tunable. You can change that. Yeah.
Okay, I will see whether I tried to find it and somehow I only found those QPS.
Yeah, no problem.
yeah,
It's definitely, there's a serial on parallel knob, and maybe my own memory was bad, but we can definitely do parallel image pooling.
Yeah, we do support parallels. Yeah, let me go back and check and see whether there's anything beyond QPS. If there's only QPS, at least we try to tweak that, and it's hard to make it meet our requirement. And if there's already a cap there, then that's much better. But if not, maybe we should consider add it.
I think we definitely have it. Like we've been using it for a while. Lantau, so
Okay.
try it and let us know if something is up.
Okay, yeah.
Derek, did you mention that you have concern on putting the image pool status on pod?
Yeah, I do.
For GKE customers, a lot of them want to know what is happening for my image pooling. Why I only see an event about the image start to pool, but I don't know why it takes so longer.
I guess all I'm saying is I don't necessarily know if progress like that is best reported through the pod API versus maybe reported through a metrics code path.
I see. Okay, thank you.
I mean, from Red Hat, we've had the same report where people would love to see something, but like it actually, we've done a lot to try to minimize the amount of writes we have to do on pods and on nodes over the years. And even then the pod writes get batched up. That like, it could be that it's best to report image pool metrics through a monitoring pipeline and then correlating. So we just need to reason through that, I think.
Yeah, an option maybe like have similar stats across runtimes, but can be omitted.
Yeah, actually, another issue we found out is that at least today, I'm not sure how CRI-O implement that, but with containerd, previously with Docker shim, because at CRI level, first at CRI level, we don't have a timeout for image pool, if I remember correctly, because image pool can take a long time and it's hard to set a fixed timeout. So at the end, what we implemented was that at the Docker shim level, we just check whether Docker report progress. If like you don't report progress in 2 minutes, we will treat it as a timeout. But that implementation is currently missing in containerd. So what we observe is that for a bad container image, it may just pending there for 2 days, and then eventually like something stopped it. So I'm not sure whether CRI-O has this issue or not, but we do see.
Yeah, I think Lantau, that's the exact issue I alluded to earlier. So that's what we want to fix, like get parity with what we had with Docker shim, right? So we know that it's still making progress. And we can make smarter decisions on the kubelet side, whether to allow it to continue.
Yeah, I just want to bring up that not just the progress, we probably also want to have some timeout based on that. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. I think we doing it in containerd. At least I remember somebody been working on PR for that. I see Raven is nodding his head here.
Yeah, there is ongoing work, and I think not 100% sure it is going to be released with 1.7. I can go double check on that, but there is some ongoing effort on progress-based timeout on image pools.
And for this kind of timeouts, we currently setting them on runtime side. So it's runtime configuration rather than kubelet controls it. I'm not sure if it's right approach long term, especially if we'll start doing this progress-based reporting as well.
Yeah, and the other thing with progress-based reporting is like if the image, we'd have to think about how that works with image pool policies, and then if we'd want to have a more granular condition to know, like if when we had the ability to pool secure images, like do we want conditions to know if the actual pool was authenticated or not? So either way, it's just a lot to think through on the progress bits. And I don't know if we can get far with metrics-based solutions. That seems probably better than abusing the kubeAPI server.
Yeah, if you
sorry,
sorry,
I'm not familiar. What's QPS?
Basically, the number of calls the kubelet is allowed to make back to a kubeAPI server. So it's queries per second.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Another option instead of the reporting the progress, even the tire-based, could be after we started pulling the images, then we know the speed that we download them with, so we can at least issue the ETA if there is like 7 or 10, 15 minutes to wait for the image, so that at least some visibility to the user of the pod.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about status updates, have it ever came up to report which registry it was pulled from, and maybe some more details? I think right now it's there is very little visibility into whether runtime configuration was applied correctly.
Am I mistaken? I thought Google had a feature that allowed you to start a pod before the image was even pulled.
Yes.
So some of these things I'm starting to wonder how that would even correlate with some of the requests that y'all were presenting here, but it seems complicated is all I'm trying to think through. And that was an edge case that I know that y'all had discussed, and I know Renal, you and I at least have discussed this in the past, but just trying to think how those things correlate.
Yeah, the lazy image pulling will be, and that'll be hard, right? It will just report started, and in the background, it's actually pulling the bits as needed.
I believe lazy image pool won't benefit by this one. But also this one won't cause any issue for lazy image pool. So less thing to do is, yeah. But I hope we can start smaller. I really like what Manu earlier mentioned, that what's the top issue, right? So top issue, basically it is, we just don't know. It is the stock or still make progress. And we start from there, and before we get into like any API change. I think that without any API change, at least we could provide something like the Docker share we have. And also, I noticed that Paco asked something like the problem to say, like measure like the image pooling latency. And actually it is, we didn't account those correctly. So that's maybe sometimes will indicate some problem. But anyway, that's for the serial pooling. It's not for the concurrent pooling. So, but no matter what, when we count those kind of things to see, do we have the issue, like the bandwidth issue, we need to start the count when the images start pooling, right? So I hope we fix those issue first before we go API change.
Are you saying API changes on pod or API changes on CRI as well? I think Alexei is advocating for.
I'm talking about the user-facing API.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you supportive? Like, I just want to give the
CRI one sounds great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Alexei, just please submit your cap as like properly, and we'll try to get in 126 if you will be working on that.
Yes, I'll do that. Thanks. It's already there. I'll just put it into the list.
Okay, I typed the summary, and next one is Fangio.
Okay, it's me. Okay, it's me. Can you hear me?
Or you want me to?
Yes, there is PPT. You can just open it. Yes.
Okay, I have it open here.
Okay. And next, so today my topic is Kubernetes support custom protocol. Next page, please. Okay, the motivation is because currently we have Kubernetes have TCP, HTTP, and now gRPC, but they all depends on network. That means the Kubernetes must be able to access, to use network to proper container status. But now we have our own Kubernetes implementation. Is in a multi-tenancy VPC enabled KBS use OVS and OVN little plugin. And in that case, the Kubernetes cannot access the pod in VPC for security reasons. So the customers can only use EXEC proper, and that's not a very good enough for them. And also and I find out that if you want to add new protocol such as gRPC as the new prototype, it's a lot of work. You need to modify the API, and you need to modify the Kubernetes API server. So it's not very. I think that was not a very good at extensibility. Next page, please. So we propose a solution is that I think Kubernetes should mainly focus on a type of the probe type of a container, such as now we have liveness, readiness, and startup, and maybe even more. And so we can let the users to describe the probe's detail freely and to implement it freely. And so in our case, we create another CRD to describe the probe. And also we use our probe manager to do the probe to the pod. And now because the probe is now just get away from the kubelet, so the users must tell the probe result to the pod, to the kubelet. And then the kubelet can do the action such as the restart containers, reset status. So our current implementation is to add a field in pod spec to communicate between the customer prober and the kubelet. Next page, please. So this is our examples that you can see we add two fields. One field is in container. It calls customer probers. It describes the current container that will support custom probe type. So we can have liveness, readiness, and startup. And also we have another field that was added in the pod spec to give the result of our prober's result right to the pod. So what every prober's result. Next page, please. And so that we have find that first we have the customer probes field in containers. It cannot be modified after the pod created. And also, if you turn off this feature, if you do not have this field, the container customer probe status field was ignored. And also we have, as the previous page says, we have container custom probe status field in pod spec. The reasons we do not put it in, first we try it in pod status. And I find out that first we cannot use kubectl to modify it because kubectl do not support to modify the pod status. And even if I use the API, I just directly use the API server to modify the pod status, the kubelet cannot watch the pod status immediately. It may take minutes to do the fully reconcile to watch the result. And next we try to put it in the container spec. And I find out that because container spec will do a hash to the status. So, because this value will be modified a lot. So I think it's not a very good places to add it. So now we finally put it in a pod spec. So this values, we hope we can modify it with kubelet and also use the controllers written by the customers. And also the third point is restart count is important because now the probe result, if I write the status to failure, so the pod will restart it. And so the probe, so I cannot, and the kubelet, the status is not in kubelet. So maybe that time we only want to use the current running pod, the current pod running status. So if the pod restarted, if container restarted, and the old values, which the restart count is old, it's totally ignored. And so to keep the guarantee that we only get the most recent values of the probe result. So that's is our total presentation. Thank you.
I'll just make sure I caught this. So basically, your ask is to allow the kubelet to delegate probing responsibility of containers to a third-party system, and then allow that third-party system to report status on pods in addition to the kubelet acting as the pod status.
Yes.
Okay. This is a first request of this nature, I guess. I haven't thought about this before. The one question I had was who is charged for in your scenario, who is charged for the probe? Is it where does the probe run?
Probe is also run in the Kubernetes node. it's running in a node, but the network is not, our security reasons, because it's a VPC. So we have the namespace was in a VPC. And so Kubernetes is in kind of, you can call it a management network. So Kubernetes cannot to directly access the pod network.
Yeah, I guess, is the compute cost of running the probe charged to the management process on your node setup, or is it charged to the container, the end user's container?
Pardon.
So like as an example, today, if you did an exec probe, the runtime could launch that exec action inside the user's pod C group. And so the user's pod is being charged to run the probe. I wasn't sure. We've had requests in the past to provide some like QPS guarantee around probes, which implied that the management part of a node should be the one who does that. In this solution where you have like a delegated custom prober, I was just curious who actually is responsible for reserving compute to run these probes.
You mean who is in charge with the extraction of these probers? It's another controllers to do the charging. Another controllers. It will, because it will run in the pod network. It's in the VPC, so it has the network abilities to probe the pod. It's not Kubernetes.
So is the custom probe itself also a pod, another pod?
Yes. It's a probe in the VPC network, in the customer VPC network.
On the same node that's running the workload?
Not in the same node, but it's in VPC. All VPC, you kind of like that. There was the how to say that, the kind of like a namespace with no policy, but also Kubernetes cannot access the pod for strong security reasons.
But the kubelet can launch the pod and
can launch the pod, but it can launch the pod, but cannot use network to access the pod.
Can it attach storage to the pod?
Yes, that was okay, but no network.
I understand what you request, because this is actually did mention in the past in the SIG Node. So but there are still some other way you can achieve the similar things, right? So you are anyway already running off this controller, kind of represent of the prober, and to poke a list of the pods running in your VPC. So you actually can signal your controller, which it is also schedule management of those kind of pod to some extent, right? So they could do say, certain things. So there's the coordination is not necessary, is between this controller, the proper controller, and Kubernetes. You could even go anyway because it is outside of this node, right? So it's the cluster level.
Yes,
so you
yes.
Go through cluster level or VPC level. So you don't need the, see the problem it is for me to change our API like this one. And I understand in your use cases, it will be very behavioral, but the problem is that to make that flexibility at the node level, could be people install some really dangerous of the problem. That's a security concern to me. So your cases actually can achieve at the cluster level, I think. And unless you think about there's the particular things you hope is kind of like you want to reach some balance between node coordination and cluster level coordination, which you couldn't do, let us know so we can help. But so far, at least based on what you described and also based on my understanding, and I think you still can move forward instead of the complicated node here. Yeah.
And also,
Yuchen, I have a question that, is there anything preventing you create a proxy to translate the signal from this custom probe to a standard kubelet probe?
For security reasons. our security strongly deny to keep Kubernetes to access the pod network.
So I think that's the part that I find most interesting. So maybe, if not today or in the future, if you could maybe spend some time talking through what the trust boundary is you want to have between the kubelet and the workload. I would find that interesting. Like, I don't know if this is a confidential computing scenario you're exploring, but like naively right now in the community, the kubelet is basically a admin over all workloads it launches. It sounds like you want to be able to take away some rights. I just don't know what partial rights you are or are not taking away, which is why I was asking, like, in a world where the kubelet can launch the pod and destroy the pod and attach storage and get an IP, like understanding the nuance of the security boundary that you need, that would probably be really enlightening. And if it was tied to like something around confidential containers, and like if there was unique stuff around secrets, I would also find that interesting.
It's just that it's because Kubernetes has more it cannot say Kubernetes because it said that the user's pod cannot access to Kubernetes. Because the user pod has a low level, Kubernetes has a more high level securities. So low level cannot access to high level securities. It's not
right. So that's what I was trying to figure out. Like the kubelet has high level, and so it touching low level makes sense. But you're basically saying the kubelet needs to have lower levels than the user workload.
Yeah, what do you describe the actual opposite you just mentioned here? But Derek, is definitely we have these use cases for the Kubernetes that we don't want the container running workload to access daemon like the Kubernetes, right? For this is why we have the gvisor project. I mean, in Google, in GKE. So that's untrusted workload if it's running on certain cluster. Majority cluster, it is, we think about the admin and all the workload running there is trustable. And of course, we have the monitoring metrics, all those kind of things to detect those bad, sorry, workload. But still, there's sometimes you bring some like the third party untrusted workload, and you maybe want to jail more. And naming space definitely is not enough. And so that's why I believe the people using the clear container, and also Google have the gvisor. That's basically, that's where original came from.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think back to, like for Kata, let's say, it would be the same scenario in my head, but I wasn't aware of anyone pushing back on probes to
Yeah,
Kata
exactly.
endpoint.
Yeah.
So this is just what seemed unique. Either way, I kind of agree with Dawn that it's hard to go and add this flexibility just now, particularly if the trust boundaries that motivated aren't well understood. Maybe Dawn understands them better than I do, but I'm missing some of them.
And yeah, it kind of like that because I think the problem is kind of like more. Maybe now we have HTTP, gRPC, and TCP, maybe even more protocols. It cannot be always implemented in Kubernetes, such as we have MQTT. Just to give an example, MQTT protocol. And so that I think it's kind of like CNI or CSI. You cannot just assume that all these users use these protocols. It's not enough.
Yeah, so separating like a security dimension from the allow me to support custom probes, that makes sense. It was just the intersection of the two that was confusing me right now. And then the implication of supporting custom probes, I think, or custom probe plugins needs some more thought, particularly around like, well, how do I know that that prober is present on a node before it could be scheduled? Like what's the planning that needs to be done to a cluster to support that? So I think we would need a little more context on those questions.
Yeah, maybe I understand you mentioned it's such as more like a CNI or CSI level of such as how to add a probe, custom probers controller such as this, right? More well-rounded solutions to think more areas of this, such as how to enable a prober, how to disable the custom prober, right? from my understanding.
Yeah, I think maybe we can wrap up this discussion today with Fangyu. If you can bring some more requirements and like maybe first split into different types of probes and security problems, and maybe think of the alternatives there. But then next stage is explain better security requirements and why it's there is such a pushback from kubelet to not being able to access user workload. So if we can bring this to one of the next SIG Node meetings, it will be great. If you cannot attend SIG Node meetings, you can always send emails that can be read offline.
May I suggest a doc better to describe this whole thing? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because first, this is our first time. I just want you to know that the community's opinion about it, and also because we have the strong requirement of it, so I pretty fastly because it cannot meet the user requirement, user expectations, and so now we can have more docs to describe our scenarios detail. Okay.
Thank you.
And I still think that this is the right path because probably very users maybe cannot be limited to only maybe 3 or 4 types. I think maybe with the more and more protocols or more and more scenarios, yes, that need to be separation of concern. It cannot be all put into kubelet.
We can add other type if it's required. And
that was lazy, that needs time, right? If you need alpha, beta, J, it's not, maybe users cannot, and also you need to modify kubelet. It's a very time-consuming task.
Yeah, yeah, and we're also looking into different types of probes, maybe like streaming probes or maybe like sub-second probes. There are multiple directions we're going to. We just need to understand scenarios better, understand how they all fit into longer-term strategy. Thank you, Fangyu. Let's switch to next topic, so we'll have time for everything. Kevin, do you want to go ahead?
I think that's one's taken care of. Like Derek added the label for that, so we can.
Okay. Thank you. Next topic about SIG Node recordings. I think Derek, it's for you.
Yeah, usually I batch these up because it's actually a time-consuming process to do this. So I will try to get all the meetings up to this week uploaded by next week for the last date between doing that. So thanks for the reminder.
I just want to thank you, Derek. Always keep that. Maybe
it's
Derek.
a very manual process. You have to log in Zoom, download everything to your local laptop, then upload everything up to YouTube, and then YouTube limits the amount of things I can concurrently upload, and then getting them all out of the playlist. So it takes when I set time to go do it, I like to do it in batches because it's timely on each one.
Okay.
Any chance we can take this as a rotation?
It's actually kind of restrictive. You need the Zoom credentials to get to the meeting recordings, and then to add to the YouTube playlist, that's also restricted. So it's probably a fewer set of folks who could do it, but if others wanted to do that,
I think Derek, maybe we can take a rotation on that one. Maybe can help you. Yeah. But I never did, so that's why from day one I never did. I think the only first SIG Node couple I never know the procedure how to through the room and upload that one.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you, Derek, for last many years.
Yeah.
Okay. Next topic is by me. This is about per container restart policy override. I wrote this document. Let's switch to some explanation. So we've been discussing sidecar containers for a long time. For sidecar containers, we need to solve so many problems, like they need to shut down with the main containers. They need to stay alive while main container restart policy maybe never. It's for jobs, for instance. Sidecar containers must start before main containers in many cases, and maybe even before init containers, and containers may have weird dependencies on each other. So some containers may control the network, some containers may control the logging, and they both need to start early, but network needs to start earlier than logging, for instance. That kind of strange interdependencies between sidecar containers, but also between regular containers as well. So we've been discussing introducing sidecar containers, so like other types of containers for a long time, and we never were able to solve all the questions and all the problems, but the community wants some problems to be addressed, at least some of them. So this proposal is limiting the problem to just a restart policy, and proposal here is to introduce per container override for restart policies. So today you can only set a restart policy on a pod, and it will apply to all containers in the pod. You can say always, so all the pods will, all the containers will always be restarted. You can do on failure when containers will be restarted on failure, and never that once container is complete, it will wait for all other containers to complete and then pod will exit. So proposal here is to allow to override this per container, and it will allow to set a restart policy override for certain containers to be always available. So let's say you have a job and this job has login container, or like metrics upload containers, that is sidecar. You can mark a job to be running and never restarted, but then a sidecar may be restarted. But then to solve the second problem, or the first problem perhaps, we also propose to introduce new flag on this override. That flag will be called terminate pod, and this flag will be will say that once this container is no longer need to be restarted, the whole pod needs to be terminated. So there is a small explanation here, and there is some TLDR, like one sentence explanation here, and the whole document outlines more details. I think we gathered some support for this proposal. It's similar to Keystone containers that are being discussed as one of the caps, but it's smaller than Keystone containers. So please take a look, and if you have comments, if this sounds good, this may be a very good first step that is so far least controversial from all other proposals on sidecar containers and Keystone containers.
Hey, Sergey. So one thing, I know Tim Hawken and I have been talking about this the last few days in the background as well, and I know you had reached out. The alternative there, which I still like, was I had pointed Tim to the binds to directives that you can use in systemd, which allows you to say this process's lifetime is bound to another. And so that when one dies, the other one can die. I still think that's useful, and it might be a thing that can overcome Tim's feedback on your proposal there, which was it's weird that a restart policy can basically result in a termination of something else. But I don't know if you had thoughts on the binds to semantic. The other part of it that was appealing to me was, I think it'd be great if the kubelet can delegate more to the operating system for some of these things. And so if we could express this in a way that we know a runtime could easily map to popular init systems, that would be probably shedding load for what the kubelet needs to manage. So either way, I know Tim has concerns on binds too, but I was just curious if you could review that part afterwards that I saw Tim had added and give your thoughts. But yeah, anyway. I don't know, Mrinal, if you have experience on pros and cons of runtimes delegating to systemd to do this, but I could easily see how a unit file could be written to do this.
Yeah, I think we'll have to experiment. We'll have to experiment with this binds to see how well we can rely on direct integration there. But I think that this sounds appealing to me, and I'm in favor of delegating to the OS and systemd where possible.
For someone,
yeah, it's definitely interesting. Of course, there's going to be a lot of issues with how much we can delegate, since we need to do the once we get the restarts, up, and possibly based on the policy, get rid of those containers, then I guess maybe that'll make sense. But the policy may be different per pod or container, right? And we're not just restarting, pods, containers in pods.
Well, the major thing, Mike, in Sergey's proposal is that the container could have a policy that says, if I ran to completion, all other containers in this pod can be terminated. So it's not even a restart policy. It's basically like, if I finish, destroy everyone else. And the feedback from Tim on that was, it's weird to have a restart policy express the fate of other containers. And so then I had pointed Tim to the systemd binds to directive, which basically allows a unit file to say the fate of this process is tied to another. And either way, that solves the job. That solves the job constraint where you have a main container running a job and you have a helper container on the side that you say it actually should be fated against. But either way, people have good-natured feedback, pro and con either way, but trying to get as many similar adjacent systems that did these types of things on everyone's radar is probably the best thing we can do.
Okay, I see. So you weren't talking about reboot restarts.
No, this is literally just like termination of a process.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, binds to is another alternative. I was thinking it's, yeah, maybe need to write down pros and cons of one versus another. I can do that. Okay, if there is no more comment on that, please read the doc and comment there if you like it or don't like it. More on sidecars, there is a issue that somebody raised. Basically, it's another issue about sidecar containers. I just put it here to highlight that we have many issues with sidecar containers. We do calculate score adjustment in kubelet, and the current calculation is based on amount of resources you want from a system. So if you have a node, and we calculate score adjustment for every single container, and if container is small, then score will be higher for this container, because we believe that this container is less important than maybe some bigger containers that is harder to relocate. It leads to some unexpected problems when all sidecar containers being terminated right away. When situation happens, we basically paint a big target on every sidecar container, saying this container is likely very unimportant. But then it leads to all sidecar containers being terminated very fast. It doesn't help to solve the problem, because they typically very tiny, but at the same time they interrupt the normal work of bigger pods. So I was suggesting here, so maybe we can adjust the score calculation to help with sidecar containers and account for entire pod request rather than this individual container. So I was wondering if anybody has some thoughts of it, and whether we need a cap for that or just go with smaller change here.
I want to add some background for both topic you mentioned here. Actually, Kubernetes initially, the restart policy is not per pod. And also Kubernetes QoS policy also is not per pod. Actually, it's per container. Both is start from per container. And there's the long debate in the past. I mean, I'm not sure it's captured in the PR, or definitely that time is no cap. And maybe it's in the email. In the past, we have the long debate and finally settle down on the pod level instead of container. I just want to say that both came from me initially as per container and not per pod. And but that time, for simplify the whole design, people have the really good reason, and at the end convince SIG Node community change. If you look at the first QoS, I believe Derek, I'm not sure that time you are around or not. Actually, it's the per pod, it's not per container. And then we spend a huge amount of time to make that convert to the per container. So, Sergey, your latest proposal, which is basically it is is like the slowly change to the per container QoS. That's hugely change. Once you start that, I mean, of course, you mentioned like the small container is a sidecar container. This is why I feel so strongly about the sidecar container every time brought up, because that's not literally fit into pod definition originally. And also it's the off-band people inject. And I want to understand how many today using sidecar container, because last time I talked to ASM and Istio, they said that they move away from the sidecar container. And the people insist of the sidecar container also is in the past don't want to do the per container QoS and the per container restart policy. I want to understand what made them change here, because that's the huge change for a lot of things, for policy, for Node.
Just to reply to the original comment from you, like this score is calculated per container today, and I'm suggesting opposite to move to per pod calculations. So
Exactly.
in this case, I'm suggesting opposite what you're saying.
Yeah. You can see that originally we only agree about the namespace is the pod level, but a lot of the resource management, because that's literally for me is the per container, also restart, because that's the thread group leads, right? So then you kill that one, but it doesn't mean like you kill other thing. But we change that one. We literally change that one. One of the reason we change that one, we also don't want the pod to become to another scheduling destination. I want to say that, because initially I'm thinking about the pod even could be the scheduling destination instead of scheduling unit. So you end up could schedule pod container into a pod, not just node, right? So we are trying to avoid that while the design. And so that's why we changed that. I just want to give some background here, and that means a lot of things have to change once we open that can of the worm.
But what do you think of changing score calculations into pod rather than container? Because right now it feels unnatural to kill sidecar container over pods. I mean, smaller container over bigger pod. It makes all pod less functional.
Definitely,
that could be, yeah, that could be challenging, right? Like, because you want your pause container to have a specific score, and how does that like reconcile with a different score for the sidecar one? So, another angle here really that we haven't explored is the whole OOMD, where we can have more granular control over OOM scores and OOM killing policies. But that's what C groups we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would rather move towards that than try to think about how to change the present state. Sidecars in general, particularly when they're injected by people who didn't know about them in their pod spec, introduce all sorts of interesting quirks. So we have to reason our way through them carefully, I guess.
I just want to say the sidecar container exactly match my original thought. Pod is the destination, about the scheduling destination, right? But the problem is initially we say, oh, we don't want to do that. And we don't want to do that because we don't want to do that. We are really want to make that pod as the minimum scheduling, like the scheduling unit. So we basically have the long discussing on that one. So we make that one, but then we later we introduce a sidecar container. That's exactly do the same thing. And it's just, so
I think ephemeral containers also introduce pod as a scheduling unit. So
but that's the one-time things I kind of like because that's kind of for debuggability and all the one-time things. So most people don't use things. So but the sidecar container actually is for like the continuous running, and it is even like the control other containers destination. So that's why I kind of like really feel like that's not much.
Okay, thank you. We only have 2 minutes left. Marcus and Paco, do you want to just give a quick update right now or move it to next week?
I can give a very quick update on this. So I actually had one picture or figure that I would like to show, but I don't know if I have time for that. But anyway, the QS class resources kept has been on the table many times last weeks, and we had a separate session or a meeting about that like last Thursday, and I think there now starts to be some clarity on the subject. And I updated the KEP with a kind of figure that illustrates what it's about and the different phases. So I urge people to take a look at that for the updated KEP PR if you're interested in. And I'm co-host, so I can quickly share the what happened.
Let me check with Parker first. Parker, are you okay to move to next time?
I think this is just a quick question. This is some current behavior, but we document we have comments in code that this is maybe a bug, and I'm not sure if we will fix it or we plan to fix it or we should document it.
Okay. So action item here is to take a look whoever interested. Thank you. Maybe if nobody reply to next week, bring it again. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think Kevin and I met with Marcus and folks, and I think this picture is a very clear diagram of what it's trying to achieve. And then there's another diagram that will show what's phase one. And then hopefully we can have something similar on the DRA side, so we can compare and contrast what all these efforts are trying to achieve.
Yeah. And if people are interested to talk about more about this, so we can arrange another kind of quick meeting on the subject. I don't know, ping me, for example, in SIG Node, or I'm in Slack or a mailing list, or so we can arrange if people are interested to chat on this.
Thank you. Sorry everybody for running over time. It was SIG Node weekly meeting. I think we're done. Anything else? Okay then. Thank you everybody. Bye bye.